fantastic casters. Roach love them, carp love them, bream love them, big perch love them. I'm going to show you just how easy it is to turn your own casters, and maybe in a later video I'll show you how to catch some quality roach with them as well.
Right, there's about 3 pints of maggots there, straight from the tackle shop, and all you want to do is quickly riddle off all that they've come in, tip them away, all the old maize and sawdust or bran or whatever they're in. There we are. Put them in there. Okay, and basically just getting rid of all that fine maize and medium that the maggots have come in. Pop all the rubbish in there. So what you've got then is nice fresh maggots, and then I'll quickly whack them through the riddle. They'll work through pretty quick because they're nice fresh maggots. An initial riddle. Oh, there's a rogue red one in there. Incidentally, I just use white maggots for my casters like most people, but I do know some people do use red maggots. You do get a different shade and a red centre, but I've never seen any need to use a red maggot. I'll turn some old maggots, you know, if I've got some reds and mixed maggots or whatever, I'll happily turn them for casters for commercials and that. But for silverfish, I just like a nice white maggot that makes a nice normal caster. I don't think you can beat that, really. See, they've all got a feed spot. They're fresh maggots, so at the moment they'll take a couple of weeks before they start to turn. In later spring and summer they'll start turning after 3 or 4 days, but in this sort of temperature, unless you bring them indoors, which not many people will be keen on doing, you know, just kept outside in a garage or whatever, they will take a couple of weeks before they start to turn. They won't start turning until that feed spot's all used up. Some places you can actually buy caster maggots as well. You go to a shop and actually ask for caster maggots, they'll give you maggots that will turn a bit quicker as well. But if you start with really nice fresh quality white maggots, then you can't go far wrong, but it just takes a little bit longer to get the final caster. You can see there's an odd skin and that settling on the riddle there, so it's important to get that first run through. After that everything should be nice and clean, but there's an odd dead in there. 99% of them will go through the riddle. There you are, that was all that was left on the riddle from 3 pints. Might have been a little bit more than 3 pints, but all those, there's an odd slow and they might go through, but most of those are dead. You see a few get stuck in the riddle, so just leave them another 10 minutes and they might work their way through, but to be honest you can pretty well chuck most of those. So there we are, that's what we've left with, every single one a nice regular. Look, there's another red maggot in there. Oh, actually that's a red pinky. Don't want that in my tub, that can go over there. So all I'm going to do is transfer them to a deeper container. This sort of container is ideal for me, just a nice sort of deep bucket. And then all I've got here is some sawdust. Now this is the sawdust from my last lot of casters. No problem reusing your sawdust as long as it's not too smelly. Some people will put a little bit of fresh in, but just fine fresh sawdust. You don't want MDF, you don't want anything that's had chemicals in it. So a lot of tackle shops will be able to give you some sawdust if you ask them nicely, or some certain sort of sawmills and that you'll be able to get it from as well. But you want nice fine sawdust. I have used hamster bedding in the past, but you have to riddle off a hell of a lot, and you get a lot of husks from a bale of hamster bedding, a bale of wood shaving. So, but if you're stuck, go to a pet shop and get some hamster bedding and really riddle it off. You want it all to go through a maggot riddle. So anyway, we'll put a good dollop of a good dollop of sawdust on there. See, and all I'm going to do now is just wet it a little bit. I don't over wet it because you don't want it to be crawling out. Give it a shake, and then just want damp sawdust. You don't want it saturated, you don't want it sodden, you don't want it dry, but nice damp sawdust. They'll keep the size and they'll just stay nice. It's just the perfect medium for turning casters. I don't turn them in bran or maize. Sawdust is what you want. Fine sawdust that will go for a maggot riddle, and it's damp, and you'll get the best quality caster doing that. So that's it. I'm going to leave them, won't touch them now for at least 3 days, and then I'll have a look and see how they if they start to turn. It might take a good week, certainly in this temperature at the moment, before you start seeing any signs of them turning. But I'll just leave them like that, and obviously if you want them to hurry up, then just bring them into a slightly warmer building. But I'm more than happy to leave these for over a week now. And that's the important thing with casters, is to buy them in advance, well in advance of when you want them. And as far as volume goes, if you want 2 pints of casters, then buy 3 pints of maggots. You're never going to get 3 pints of casters off 3 pints of maggots. So just bear that in mind as well. So you know, if you want 2 pints of casters, buy 3 pints of maggots. If you want a pint of casters, buy a pint and a half of maggots. You know, that sort of ratio should serve you quite well. But that's it. There you are, my beauties. Hurry up and turn. Very cold last night. I was expecting a few more than that this morning actually, but 1/8 of a pint out of that to go with the pint or so I've already turned. A bit slow this morning, but very, very cold. First frost for a few days. 45 minutes later, they've all gone through. This is what's left. What I'm going to do is tap them into up there. You often get a load just stuck in there, sort of semi-dormant ones. Any that are definitely a caster I'll poke back through, and all the others I'll just tap off back into the maggots. So you get these ones just stuck up like that. They're not turned, they're just too docile to crawl away through, so they can normally be tapped or just pop them back in. You just don't want them clogging your riddle, if anything else. And that's what we're left with. Very, very fresh casters. You know, I'd pick that one out and I'd chuck that one away, but actually there's very few skins in there actually. The very first 1 or 2 runs through you'll get skins, and the later stages when they're almost all turned you'll start to get skins again. But pick out, now obviously the fish will leave them, they won't eat them, but I don't want them to taint my bait, and I don't want to feed something that the fish might not necessarily eat. I'm sure they do eat skins and crap and everything, but if you have a bag of crisps and you find one bad crisp, one green crisp or something, you're going to inspect every other crisp you eat. If you have a plate of chips and one of them's a bit disgusting, you're going to inspect every single chip you eat. So don't give the fish a chance. Just give them fresh bait and they don't need to be wary of it. Every single one tastes nice. There's nothing to inspect. Just gobble it all in. Yum, yum, yum. Now these are a little bit on the light side, so but they'll darken off. So but yeah, nice, clean, fresh. There's a good 1/8 of a pint there, maybe a bit more. Plenty for a canal session. You'd want probably a good pint to 2 pints on a still water if they were feeding well, but on a canal I've had more than a few double-figure bags on a 1/4 to 1/2 a pint of casters. Surprising what you can catch feeding very, very little. That's all I've got left now. Couple of days and that'll be it. Still an odd nice caster in there. Bit more active today, no frost this morning. There we are, a minute later, and most of them have already gone through, but I'll leave it another 10-15 minutes at least. And what I will do is I'll let them darken off, just leave them in the air for a little bit and they'll just darken off. I love really nice dark bronze golden casters. The ones straight off the riddle are a bit pale, but they'll soon darken off. Then I store them in a brown paper bag, in a poly bag, in the fridge, and they're absolutely perfect for fishing. Look at those. Well, as far as storing casters goes, my favourite way is as soon as I've riddled them off, I keep them nice and dry and I put them in brown paper bags, and that helps to wick out all the moisture and keep them nice and crisp. And then put them in that, bag them up nice and tight, and then put them in a poly bag, so a brown bag inside a poly bag, bag it up nice and tight, take out, make sure all the air's out, just pop them in the fridge like that.
or a cool bag with some ice blocks or whatever you've got, but they must be kept cool. To keep them fridged, they'll last at least 3 or 4 days like that without even being took out the bag again. But if you want to keep them for longer than that, take them out, let them breathe for a few hours, then bag them back up. Sometimes change the bag as well if the bag's got a little bit damp or whatever. But that's how I like to keep them, and you can keep them well over a week like that. If I'm roach fishing, then generally 10 to 12 days is the maximum I'd like to keep my casters. If I was carp fishing, I'd use these in a month, as long as they've not gone black and horrible. But even then, you can catch carp on black and horrible casters. So that's how I like to keep my silverfish casters, when I really want the best quality casters going. There are other options. Some people use little clip lock tubs and take all the air out. Whoop, they're blown away. I've seen people keep them in little coffee jars, in little flasks. An age-old way of keeping casters is in a decent bait tub, and then put your casters in, get some damp newspaper, put that on top like that, and then you put a carrier bag over the top of that, just to keep all the air out, and then put a lid on. Actually, this hasn't got perforated holes in the lid anyway, so it wouldn't be so bad, but it's still good practice. You want to keep all the air out, basically, and that's an age-old way of storing casters in a tub like that. And obviously you need different size tubs or different numbers of tubs depending on the quantity. If I'm taking any quantity of casters anywhere, for a festival or something, I've got these buckets. They take exactly 10 points. And because it's a nice thick plastic, the casters won't burn. If you just store casters in a thin poly bag, in like that, they will burn. You'll get black marks and horrible marks and everything. And sometimes when people buy them from the shop, they don't take the casters out of the bags, and they'll put them in a fridge for 24 hours, and you get all these horrible black burn marks, and they'll start to sour like that. So but something thick, thick plastic, they won't burn in a thick plastic tub. So when I'm taking 10 pints, I'll fill this to the brim and I'll put the lid on, and to be honest, they'll keep in a fridge like that for a week they don't need any looking after them. They'll keep it like that for a fridge for a festival, or in a big cool bag for ages like that. And if you do have them in poly bags, the best advice I can give is to put them in a thick black poly bag. The thick bin refuse bags and that they won't burn in a nice black or non-translucent bag. Hey up. Got the cat, yeah? Come on then. And so they won't burn in a bag like that. But one little thing that I try to make sure is just smell the bag. Make sure it's not a really chemically bag. Some of them smell like petrochemicals, like real plasticky, horrible smell to them. So if I have a black bag that stinks of plastic and everything, then I won't use that. So a nice non-smelly bag is another option. The final way, and it's a way I use a hell of a lot, and especially if I'm carp and F1 fishing, just keep them in a tub of water. Keep them completely covered in a tub of water like that, and they will last like that for over a week. I just change the water every 2 or 3 days, and they will look just like that in a month's time. They won't even go black or anything. You can keep them in a tub of water in the fridge like that, and they will look immaculate. They might soften up a little bit. Just keep checking them and just change the water every few days. They will keep happily like that for well over a week. I've had casters in a bucket like that, a bucket of water, and a month later they've looked exactly like I've took them off the riddle. They're all dead. They're not going to come round. I still don't like to use them for roach. Maybe it's just me, but for carp and F1s, I've got no problem using casters that I've kept in a bucket of water or a tub of water for a month. That's how well they will keep like that. So that's something to think about as well. But in the main, if I want nice fresh casters, or on a nice roach session, in a brown paper bag, in a poly bag, fridge them for 3 or 4 days, no problem whatsoever, and I'll happily use these in a week's time and be confident that they're still nice and fresh. Well, this is a job I do when I generally get to my peg. Actually, some people do it and they'll get rid of all the floaters and then bag them up and store them, but I prefer to do it on the bank if I can. So I'll quickly cover them in water, and then just tilt the tub, and you can float them off. You could use a fine mesh net or something like that as well, but generally just tilt in the tub, and don't tilt it too much or too fast, because you'll lose some of the more neutral density casters will suddenly zoom off as well. But you'll get rid of all the floaters that way. And as you can see there in the tub of water, they don't all necessarily sit sideways like a maggot would. Some of them stand upright, and they're like little soldiers. So that's worth seeing. It's really nice to see how they sit on the bottom, actually, casters. And any leftover casters that I've floated off, because they're buoyant, they can counterbalance the weight of a heavier hook. So that's worth bearing in mind as well. If you're fishing for like chub or something and you've got quite a heavy hook, 1 or 2 floating casters on the hook can be better than 2 sinking casters, just to negate the weight of the hook. But they are beautiful casters, so you can save those. A second cover in the water and a second float off, just to get rid of any of the last remaining floaters, and you'll still be left with 95% of your casters. But there you are, absolutely beautiful casters, perfect for quality fish.
Look at that on the caster, double caster that one. I've just had 2 on the bounce on double caster. Absolute beaut.